Okay, so here we are, the final car launch, Alpine. Now, I do apologize if I sound a little bit bunged up. It's because I am a little bit bunged up. But this one isn't really that exciting in terms of what to expect because I've kind of already seen it. Alpine did a shakedown at Silverstone a couple days ago, and the pictures have been online. It's not a great image. It's not, really good quality, so there's still a little bit to be checked out on the car launch, but I've already got an idea of the livery they've gone with, carbon, and so I'm not anticipating anything too exciting, but it is the last car launch, so let's get into it. So far, this has been incredibly corporate. The entire thing has been really, really corporate, really focusing on the Alpine cars, like the road cars, that is. It's felt very sort of Snorefest. In their defense, the reason they rebranded from Renault to Alpine was to push their road cars and accelerate the brand. So in their defense, they're obviously going to talk about the road cars because that's the whole point of rebranding to Alpine. Still though, as someone that doesn't care about the road cars, still Snorefest.
We can't wait any longer.
Okay, they're finally going to show the car. Here we go. That's a whole platform coming up. Okay, the whole stage is coming up. Interesting. They're doing the whole 2 livery thing again, are they? Oh, God. Oh, God. BWT pink car for the first 2 races then, is it? And then blue after that. To be honest... Hold on, let's see the rest of it before I say anything. Every car's got so much black now. Every car is focusing on carbon to save weight. Mercedes is pretty much predominantly carbon. They reckon that's going to save 3 kilograms in weight. But it kind of works for the Mercedes because they've had an all-black livery before. But all of these teams now are doing black liveries because they're saving weight. And Alpines, in my opinion, their beautiful blue was already ruined by the pink. So, the black kind of accents it okay, I suppose. I don't like the pink livery. But ironically, I think the pink livery looks better with the black than blue, black, and pink. So, they did have a good season, Alpine. Like, Alonso had terrible reliability. He'd have been pretty high up in the standings if it wasn't for that. He'd definitely be ahead of Ocon. But they finished 4th in the Constructors. The only teams ahead of them, Ferrari, Mercedes, who came on strong later in the season, and Red Bull. That's pretty good for Alpine. Do you know what? That pink livery doesn't look half bad. I actually think that one looks better than the blue one. If it was all blue, I would much prefer the blue, but the blue has to have that ugly pink side pod. Whereas the pink one, I don't know, I think it actually looks nicer. There was an Alpine livery from a couple years ago, right? I'm going to put image on the screen right now. How good does that look? That was such a good livery. The blue, the Alpine A, the blue, so good. Obviously, branding now with BWT has forced them to have pink. Now, some people like the color pink. I'm not against the color. Like I say, that pink livery I think actually looks quite nice. The issue I have is the pink with the blue, because the blue is such a nice shade of blue. It's a shame because I think it ruins the livery in my opinion. And now they've added a considerable amount of black to it as well. I'm just going to throw this out there just in case it's not obvious. The blue car is the actual car. The pink one is the show car that they've obviously dressed up in the livery. So they've chosen the FIA spec show car just to show you what the pink livery will look like, whereas the actual car is the one in blue. You can see, just if you look at the nose and the side pods, you can see the difference in them. So don't be looking at the pink car for any anything noticeable in terms of the design of the car, because that is just that's just the spec car. That reminds me, actually, for the first time, and they've just mentioned this, Alpine, the French team, Renault, are going to have an all-French lineup. Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. And they notoriously do not like each other. So they'll try and gloss it over and, oh, no, we'll be fine, we'll be fine. If there's any sort of tension or contact early in the season or something like that, that situation is going to boil over. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens between those two, because there is no love lost there. All right, so let's take a look around the actual Alpine car. This is the new car. Now, I said not to focus on the pink one. That was the one on the stage. This one is a render of the car in their pink livery. I actually think it looks really nice. Now, the side pods especially, it's kind of an evolution of the car that they already had. If you remember, I'm trying to think the exact race, but Alpine had a side pod update last year, and they went with this really aggressive side pod design. It had this massive sweep, went down a little bit like Red Bull, especially with the inlet quite far forward like Red Bull adopted. But the side of the side pod kind of curved up a little bit. Here, you can kind of see it there, that deep, deep channel. And they've got something very similar with the new car here. I'm sure it's been evolved a little bit to make it a little bit more efficient, and it's definitely sculpted a little bit more on the inside. And much like you see with the Mercedes, they've still got this like quite large bulge here. We've seen this on quite a few of the cars now, whether it's to do with cooling or it's an aerodynamic benefit. I'm honestly not sure, but we've seen it on quite a few of the cars now, and it's a lot more than they had on the previous car. It was there to an extent, but not quite that, that extreme. One of the things you couldn't fault Alpine for last year was its efficiency in a straight line. It was one of the quickest cars in a straight line. And that has to be down to efficiency. They had to have had a really efficient downforce package, which allowed them to run skinny wings. And that meant they were really quick in a straight line. So they're probably not going to change too much on that front. But from this front angle, you can see the slight differences to the front wing. The front wing was quite flat on last year's car, but it's still quite bulbous at the front here. Whereas on the new car, it's actually formed a little bit better, a little bit more like the Mercedes, actually, with quite a wide nose to it. But the actual flaps themselves, you can see they're not quite as flat and wavy as they were last year. And that is not a technical term, by the way. But it looks like, at least on this spec car, which is the renders that we have, it's a little bit more of a normal front wing. Because I felt like last year, Alpine's wing, front wing especially, looked way different than all the other cars. So they're obviously going for a completely different concept. You can kind of see the side pods here as well and how aggressive they are. Look at that. There's quite a small inlet there, really, considering the actual size of the side pods themselves. So they've definitely evolved last year's car. They're not doing anything too different. They were happy with the way it was. Maybe they've been able to gain something from the Renault power unit as well. They weren't overly happy with the idea that Ferrari had gained 30 horsepower, because they were like, what? Where's that from? So I doubt Renault have made massive leaps with their power unit, but if they can gain a little bit more power, can they challenge for wins? I think that's probably a little bit far-fetched. The top three would have to have an absolute nightmare for that to happen, I think, but only time will tell when we get to testing whether the Alpine is actually any good.